He slipped into a coma for a short while, and I think he was in a coma for maybe a week. And whatever happened, he came out of the coma. Now, actually, what he told me was that he ran kata, that he prayed and ran kata in his mind to whatever it was. He brought his self back. Okay. However, she showed back up to tell him that she couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. She didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know how was he going to be able to provide for her. Is there going to be a long time of rehabilitation, all that? She just said she's not cut out for this. She really didn't like martial arts any damn way. Hello, Governor. This is Rakasti Newfoundlandville. Welcome back. I'm going to be talking about a truth that we can all understand on some level, and that's the futility of outrunning your heart. When we face profound loss, our first instinct can often be to run, to fill our lives with noise, with distractions, with anything and everything to keep the silence from catching up. We're all guilty of running from grief at some point. But what happens when the thing that you're trying to outrun starts to become a monster? I'm taking a media therapy deep dive into Doctor Who, Season 11, Episode 4, Arachnids in the UK. I know what you're thinking, because he's like, wait a minute. I thought Rakad didn't do arachnids, spiders. And you're right. I don't. I could say a lot about this episode, and we'll get into it, but this episode is set back on Earth after a life-altering adventure for the Doctor and her companions. And it isn't just about giant spiders. I know it sounds like it might be like eight-legged freaks, but it's not. It's a brilliant metaphor for how grief can fester and grow, transforming a small, manageable pain into a monstrous, overwhelming presence. Now, I'm going to explore how Graham and the other companions grapple with their return to reality, forever changed by loss, and what the show teaches us about the ultimate futility of avoidance. Get ready to stop running, face your own monsters head on, and discover how confronting your own grief rather than escaping it is the only way to truly find peace. Let me tell you a little story. Now, many of you, if you've been listening to me for a while, know that I have taken martial arts damn near all my life. Now, I must admit that today, on this day, I'm a little rusty. I don't practice as much as I should. That doesn't mean you want none of this. But I'm not as proficient as I used to be. Father Time has a way of catching us all, and it has caught my ass and kicked it. But when I was a very young man, now, my dad was in the military. He was an officer in the military, and we moved around quite a bit. We were in each place about a year, 2 years tops. And there was one particular place that we had pulled up, and I had a karate instructor. Cool guy. I liked taking classes with him because he explained things very well. And then his art was crisp. And what I mean by that was, it wasn't somebody who let being a practitioner of the arts go to their head. Like when he performed katas and when he sparred, all of his movement was very crisp. He didn't waste any actions. He didn't showboat. He was about that business. He was about the life. And being a martial artist was a lifestyle that he actually lived, not just something that he did. However, he got sick. He was injured, and he became very ill. And he ended up being in the hospital, damn near paralyzed. Yes, this is not dragging the Bruce Lee story and none of that type shit. His wife, at the time, came to see him at the hospital, and he was in the hospital for extended time. They thought that maybe the injury wasn't that bad and he would get out soon, but it turns out he slipped into a coma for a short while, and I think he was in a coma for maybe a week. And whatever happened, he came out of coma. Now, actually, what he told me was that he ran kata, that he prayed and ran kata in his mind to whatever it was. He brought himself back. Okay. And it's weird because I've actually had two senseis. One when I was very young, and another when I was much, much older, when I was an adult, that something similar happened to them in their life. However, with this one, when I was a young man, his wife showed back up when he came out of the coma. However, she showed back up to tell him that she couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. She didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know how was he going to be able to provide for her. Is there going to be a long time of rehabilitation, all that? She just said she's not cut out for this. She really didn't like martial arts any damn way. She liked him, but she didn't like his lifestyle. She didn't like that he lived a righteous lifestyle. You know, this is the way. She didn't like it. So, in the span of 2 weeks, maybe, he had been in the hospital, then he slipped into a coma, now he's out. So in about 2 weeks, she had already moved on, had another man, the whole shit. She told him when he came out of coma that she was getting a divorce. She couldn't do it. She didn't know when he was going to get out, but she wasn't willing to stick around and find out how long it was going to take. That is absolutely devastating to find out. You are literally fighting for your life, let alone fighting for your lifestyle, fighting for everything that means something to you, and the one person supposed to have your back quit on you. Now, many people would have folded up their tent, circled the wagons, and maybe found a reason to not go on. But I don't know if it angered him or what, but his grief over the situation, the loss of his wife, was so devastating to him that it actually motivated him. And it's almost like, like that scene out of Kill Bill where the bride, she is willing herself to start moving her limbs to get out of when she comes out of a coma. Now, this is nothing like Kill Bill, because she got out of coma like when she woke up, she got out of the hospital in like a day or something. It took him some time, some rehab, but he got stronger and stronger every day. Now, just so it turns out that the nurse who was in charge of his rehabilitation got very close with Sensei. Now, it could be said Florence Nightingale effect. Maybe. He fell in love with the woman who was caring for him and doing what his first wife wouldn't do. Or maybe she fell in love with him seemingly for the strength that he possessed, the will that he was, to will himself back into good health. Who knows? I remember finding out much later, because now we had moved. But this sensei was one of those ones that he had such a profound effect on me that I kind of kept up with him, which is strange for a young man. Come to find out that he saw his former wife later in life, after he had on the mend and he was made a new life for himself, and now he was happily married. His new wife, the nurse, she trained with him as well, was progressing through the ranks quite quickly. They had a child together, and the former wife, the dude that she went off with, just say he did not treat her well. It was bad. And when Sensei ran into her, she was down bad. And now she wanted him back. She wanted to rekindle things now that he had had solid footing again. Now, of course, he rejected that immediately, because his new wife was one of the reasons that he had solid footing, and he wasn't willing to jeopardize that for anything. It's funny how things work out when you stop running from your grief. Let's get into it. Hello, Governor. This is Rakai Steve, new from the Ville. and we're here to talk about Doctor Who, Season 11, Episode 4, Arachnids in the UK. Now, if you've been rocking with me for a while, you know how this goes. Intro, story. I do this where I introduce myself and tell you why we're here. I give a couple quotes that I think go with this particular discussion. And then I give my personal thoughts, and then we're out of here. Now, I used to do a long recap. I'm not going to do that anymore. So this is a new style, new format for me. So you let me know how it's working for you. Now, you know that I love my quotes. So let's go ahead and get into them. Now, this first one is from Martha Beck. And she says, "Grief is like a stream running through our life. And it's important to understand that it doesn't go away. Our grief lasts a lifetime, but it's our relationship to it that changes." The second quote is from Brene Brown, and they say, "We run from grief because loss scares us, yet our hearts reach toward grief because the broken parts want to mend." And the last quote is one that I say often because I just absolutely love this quote, and it fits. It's from James Baldwin, and he says, "You cannot fix a problem that you refuse to face." This media therapy deep dive is going to be called Running from Grief. Now, when I watch this episode, you know I don't do spiders, creepy crawlies, insects of any kind. I don't like horror, but I let it rock because this is Doctor Who, and I was like, it can't be that bad. And there's a couple times that it got me because I don't do jump scares and bugs. I don't like that shit. Now, if you watch this episode, you would understand that it had been easy to focus on corporate greed and corporate malfeasance and, just doing all sorts of things that are wrong corporate-wise. But I didn't focus on that. I looked at our characters and how they ended up here at this particular hotel. I looked at how when they arrived back in Sheffield, the problems that they were going through and why we were here. And Ryan, Graham, even Yaz in her own way, were running from grief. And even, to be honest, the doctor, the 13th Doctor, who now she, played by Jodie Whittaker, is still running from grief. The end of the Capaldi era, Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, took it very, very hard when Clara died. How long does it take to get over that? I mean, okay, yes, he had 4.5 billion years that went by in the span of a couple weeks or what have you to deal with that grief and to break out of the self-imposed prison, but grief affects everyone differently. How long does it take to get over, to work through your grief? Now, a lot of us, myself included, use distractions, conflict, emotional avoidance to deal with loss. It's a self-defeating strategy. This particular episode is a powerful metaphor for this truth, demonstrating how unaddressed sorrow doesn't just go away. It festers, it grows in the dark, and eventually becomes a monstrous, inescapable problem that must be faced head on. Now, there's a couple points that I want to hit in this particular episode, and then we're going to keep it pushing. What about Graham's initial coping mechanism? His adventures with the Doctor were thrilling. They were all-consuming. And that's for a reason. He went into each one of these adventures 100% because it took his mind off Grace. He needed distractions from her death. And they never said how long he'd been with her, but they'd only been married for 3 years. And if you marry someone, especially this much later in life, you expect that you're going to do the rest of your life with that person. So however much time you had left, who would have ever thought it would only be 3 years? I mean, even though they're older, more mature, they thought that they had a lot more time than 3 years. When they returned home to Sheffield, Graham went home and had to deal with the reality that the house that he returned to was empty. And it forced him to confront the silence that he's been trying to outrun. When he went home, everything in the house reminded him of Grace. He saw Grace, like literally, he saw Grace in the house. He had these like mini flashbacks where he saw her everywhere. He smelled items of her clothing because he could still smell her. And even though that might seem therapeutic, it also prolongs the hurt. It prolongs the grief. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have done it, because everyone has their own process to work through. But all the distractions that he had to help him forget that he's now alone in this world, he had to deal with them now. You know, and the thing is, if we look at this episode, Ryan kept this distance from Graham. Now, he already had a problem with Graham marrying his grandmother, because I think for a long time it was just his grandmother and him. And part of that is because he had issues about his mother and particularly his father. His mother passed, and some people think that someone dying is them abandoning them. Doesn't make any sense, but in their mind it does. And even though Ryan's mother passed, his father did abandon him, because his father also ran from his grief. His father did not know how to deal with the loss of his wife. And yes, it's easy to say, you have a son, be there for your son. But when your emotional anchor is taken from you, he fell apart and he didn't know how to be there for his son. And it's hard to say we can't fault him for that, because you want to, but I get it. You can't force someone to do something that they are not equipped with emotionally, intellectually, to deal with. And so his father did what many people do: avoidance, distractions. He ran. So Ryan learned it instinctually, and he ran from his emotions. He didn't want any part of Graham, because I already had an issue with you, because I don't know how to deal with my mom being gone, my dad up and left me. And a lot of times it's easier to look at what you lost instead of what you have. Cherishing and looking at, even though these people seemingly didn't want me, his nan, his grandmother, loved him and cherished him and wanted him and said, I got you, baby boy. And Graham came into her life and accepted and loved and cherished Ryan as well. But Ryan has already built up a wall and had the bricks, and he wasn't really to pull it down and look over and see who wanted to be in his life. All he could focus on is who wasn't in his life. And sometimes that's a deep sorrow. It's a deep sadness that is not impossible to get past, but it's hard for a lot of people. Because honestly, Graham and Ryan could have come together and grieved together this woman that they both loved in very different ways, but they both loved her. So Ryan ran from Graham, the person who would understand what he's going through the most, because that would force him to confront that pain. My last point I'm going to make in this was the actual spiders, the actual monsters, these giant arachnids that were from toxic dumping. They're aliens, and then they were eating some toxic waste, and so they were growing and becoming a problem. The spiders, sometimes you think when people, they're like, what kind of bullshit are they writing? They just writing anything. Yeah. Or you could say that the spiders are a physical manifestation of our character's metaphorical grief. I sounds wild, right? He's like, ain't nobody on this show that damn smart writing this type of stuff. Maybe. It's one of the reasons why I do these deep dives, and it works for Doctor Who, because there's a lot more under the surface, even on a silly ass episode like this. The more that the characters try to contain or avoid the spiders, the bigger the spiders became. The more dangerous the spiders became. And in the end, the only way to stop the monsters, these giant ass spiders, was stop avoiding them, stop running, and confront them. You can't use them as a distraction anymore. We have to deal with them. It was going to take some direct and decisive action. By the end of the episode, we see that the true emotional climax of this episode wasn't them beating the spiders, putting the spiders out of misery, trapping the spiders so that the problem has been dealt with succinctly. No, it was our characters finally being forced to face their grief and take the first steps towards real healing. This is Rakai Steed, new from the Ville. Make sure that you like this. Hit the like button. It's real easy. Make sure that you share it with everyone you can. And leave me some comments. What did you think about this particular episode itself? What did you think about the metaphor of running from your grief? I will be the first to admit that I have done it personally on more than one occasion. And now I am 6 years deep in therapy because of it. You know, because a lot of times when you're running from grief, you don't even know that's what you're doing. You don't know that your actions, the distractions you put in your life, the avoidance, that's what you're doing. And more times than not, you take one situation that you're grieving, that you're in mourning, and you keep piling more and more on until you're like Hercules, or until you're like Atlas with the weight of the world on your shoulders. And all of it is grief, sorrow, sadness, mourning, depression, all of those things that seep in and destroy your life. Listen, if for some reason you have not subscribed yet, it's okay. It's not too late. Hit the button, subscribe, and then watch all the videos that you can, because there may be something that speaks to you. Remember, at the end of the day, everything we watch is this right here, but it's even more powerful when you can use this right here.